Alright people, so we will start with in the previous slides we have done the normal respiration basically. Okay, so we have done the normal inhalation and normal exhalation. Okay, so in continuation with the series, okay, we will now do forceful exhalation. Now what do we actually mean by forceful exhalation? This is a little different from the normal exhalation. See, in normal exhalation, the diaphragm is undergoing normal relaxation. This is basically normal relaxation. So no involvement of either contraction of muscles. So there is no contraction of muscles, and hence ATP is not required. ATP is not required. Just because they have expanded, they are now going to return back to their original position, and hence we don't require any ATPs, and it's a normal process of relaxation. But here in forceful exhalation, it doesn't happen that way. Okay, it doesn't happen that way. So breathing is completed in two phases. We know that one is inspiration and the other one is expiration. Inspiration is known as an active process. Why? Because it involves contraction of muscles, and if it involves contraction of muscles, you will require ATP for the same process. Okay, expiration is a passive process. It's a byproduct of inspiration. We don't require any contraction of muscles, and hence we don't require ATP as well. So it's a byproduct basically. Inspiration is an active process wherein muscles actually contract and ATP is required. Expiration is a passive process wherein muscles do not contract and ATP is not required. So if we forcefully try to exhale, some more air out of the process, some more air is actually rushed out, and this process, some more air is passed out of our lungs, and this is known as forceful expiration. So in this case, we are exhaling more air out than we are supposed to. So in this case, the diaphragm will move more upwards. Okay, so in this case what will happen is, during inhalation we know that phrenic or radial muscles and external intercostal muscles, these are the two muscles which basically participate. So in the rib cage we have these phrenic or radial muscles, and in the diaphragm we have these in the rib cage we have these intercostal muscles. In the rib cage we have the external intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm we have the phrenic muscles. We have the phrenic or radial muscles. So these muscles basically do what? They contract, and when they contract or expand, the inspiration takes place. So phrenic or radial muscles and external intercostal muscles participated in the rib cage. In inspiration process, it moves out, and the diaphragm becomes flat. So what happens is, this is the normal position, let's say, and the diaphragm will become flat, and the rib cage will basically move out. The rib cage is going to move out. Okay, so volume increases, so the pressure decreases. So if the volume increases, the pressure decreases, and hence the air rushes in during inhalation. So during exhalation, the muscles come back to their normal positions. During exhalation, the muscles will now come back, both the intercostal and the phrenic muscles will come back to their normal positions. Now what happens is, if some more air is to be forced out, let's say if you are forcefully pushing out air, it will become an active process. Why? Because now you will require muscles to do so. It is not just a byproduct of inhalation. You will now require special muscles to do so, and these muscles, there are two muscles that will help. These are the, so in inhalation it was intercostal muscles, in exhalation in inhalation it was external intercostal muscles, in inhalation it is internal intercostal muscles. So again, between the 12 pairs of ribs that we have, there are 11 pairs of intercostal muscles. So we have 11 pairs of intercostal muscles between the 12 pairs of ribs that we have, and and the second pair of muscles which are going to help in this are the abdominal muscles. So what happens is the diaphragm is actually attached to the abdominal muscles. So what happens is when internal intercostal muscles contract, so internal intercostal muscles are within the rib cage. When they contract, the rib cage also contracts and it becomes closer, and hence the volume decreases. So it contracts, the rib cage contracts, the volume of the thoracic cavity decreases. When abdominal muscles contract, they push the diaphragm upwards. So the diaphragm is pushed more upwards. So this will be basically the new volume of the thoracic cavity. The rib cage contracts, the diaphragm is more dome shape. So it becomes even more dome shape. It goes further up. So this position, if you look into it, this position is the position of forceful expiration. See, this is the position of inspiration. This one, this is the normal position. The white one is the normal position. Forceful inspiration, the volume increases. Okay, the thoracic cavity, the volume of thoracic cavity increases due to external intercostal muscles and the phrenic or radial muscles of the diaphragm movement. So it increases, the air rushes in. During expiration, this is the normal position. So this is the normal position. However, during forceful expiration, this is the position wherein the volume becomes further lesser. Okay, the diaphragm, so what happens is these abdominal muscles push, and the abdomen basically pushes the diaphragm further. So it becomes more dome shaped. The abdominal muscles push and the abdomen basically pushes the diaphragm further. Okay, when abdominal muscles contract, they push the diaphragm upwards. So it becomes even more dome shape. Contraction of these two muscles results in the decrease in volume of the thoracic cavity. So again, there will be a decrease in volume of the thoracic cavity. If there is a decrease in volume, obviously the pressure will increase and the air rushes out. Okay, pressure will increase, it will become more than the atmospheric pressure and the air will rush out. So just to reiterate further, in forceful expiration, forceful exhalation is basically when it is no longer a passive process. Normally, expiration is a passive process. It's a byproduct of inspiration. So in normal respiration, the exhalation or expiration process is a relaxation process. It doesn't involve any contraction of muscles. It will just involve the decrease in volume of the thoracic cavity. And how will this decrease in volume? Because it has increased in volume due to external intercostal and phrenic muscles. Phrenic muscles have contracted, have made the diaphragm flat, and external intercostal muscles have made the rib cage broader. Okay, so the thoracic cavity volume has increased, because of which the pressure will decrease and hence the air will rush in. Okay, that is during inspiration. In expiration, what happens is these external intercostal muscles and the phrenic or radial muscles relax. So obviously the chest cavity becomes to its normal position. It comes back to its normal position with the diaphragm being dome shaped and the thoracic cavity again condensing. So what happens is that this volume now becomes less, because of which the pressure becomes higher and hence air is rushed out, because the pressure inside the lungs is more than the atmospheric pressure. Now during forceful respiration means when we are exhaling out air forcefully. Okay, there are a lot of asanas in yogic culture in which we do forceful respiration. So during this forceful respiration, it is no longer a passive process, it becomes an active process wherein there is actual contraction of muscles that is involved. And during this actual contraction of muscles, what happens is that there are internal intercostal muscles within the rib cage, which basically the internal intercostal muscles, there are 11 pairs between 12 pairs of ribs, and there are abdominal muscles as well. So these abdominal muscles and the intercostal muscles, they do what? They decrease the volume of the thoracic cavity. So the intercostal muscles, which are basically 11 pairs between 12 pairs of ribs, and the abdominal muscles, they decrease the volume of the thoracic cavity. Okay, so when internal intercostal muscles contract, when they contract, the rib cage also contracts. This comes closer and hence the volume basically decreases. So when the abdominal muscles contract, they push the diaphragm upwards. When the abdominal muscles contract, they push the diaphragm upwards. It becomes even more dome shaped. okay, when even more dome shape, and the contraction of these two muscles results in the decrease in volume of the thoracic cavity. Decrease in volume corresponds to a increase in pressure, and hence more air is pushed out of the lungs. Okay, so this is called forceful respiration. Okay, so just in continuation with the inspiration and expiration part. So with the inspiration and expiration part, okay, so in breathing we have a process called inspiration and simultaneously a process called expiration. So the reason why inspiration is regarded as an active process, because here there is contraction of muscles which are involved. And what are these muscles? These muscles are basically the external intercostal muscles, and these are between the ribs. Okay, so in 12 pairs of ribs we have 11 pairs of these muscles. In 12 pairs of ribs we have 11 pairs of muscles. We have 11 pairs of muscles. Okay, so this is called external intercostal. Contraction of muscles, this is the external intercostal muscles. And what else do we have? What else do we have? We have the diaphragm, which is connected to the phrenic muscles. The diaphragm which is connected to the phrenic muscles, or we can call them as radial muscles. So just a quick update out here. So let's say this is basically the normal position. Okay, this is the normal position of the thoracic cavity. This is the dome shaped diaphragm, and this is, let's say, the rib cage. Okay, so during inspiration what is happening is there is contraction of muscles between the rib cage, which is external intercostal muscles. What they will do is they will make the rib cage more broader. They will broaden it, okay, up and out. So they will broaden out. Okay, they will broaden out. So this will increase, and what will happen to the phrenic muscles and the radial muscles, which are between the diaphragm and the rib cage? So this will basically make the diaphragm more flat. Okay, so this is dome shaped here. Now during, so let's say this is the position during inhalation. This is the position during inhalation. So what has happened is this has broadened out. External intercostal muscles, there are 12 pairs of ribs, and between the 12 pairs of ribs we have 11 pairs of these muscles, which do what? They increase the thoracic cavity volume. So the volume of thoracic cavity increases, and since it increases, the pressure decreases. So obviously the pressure would decrease, and hence air from atmosphere will come in the lungs. Okay, this is called normal inhalation. Now what happens during exhalation? What happens during expiration? This is a passive process. This is just a result of inspiration. It will be an automatic process. So automatic process means what? There is no involvement of contraction of muscles. So no muscles are basically contracting. So what happens is during expiration, this just returns to its normal position. This diaphragm becomes again dome shaped, and the external intercostal muscles also relax. The phrenic muscles and the radial muscles relax, and so the phrenic muscles and the radial muscles, they will also relax, and the external intercostal muscles will also relax, which will do what? Which will bring the thoracic cavity to its original volume. So here the volume basically decreases. The volume decreases during normal expiration, which is also known as a passive process because it doesn't involve any direct contraction of muscles. So the contraction of muscles, so the volume decreases and hence pressure increases. So if the pressure increases, so the pressure becomes more than the atmospheric pressure and the air gushes out. Okay. Now during forceful breathing, during forceful expiration, what is happening is there are two pairs of muscles. There are two pairs of muscles in addition to the muscles that were taking part earlier, which will take part, and these are basically internal intercostal muscles, which are located again between the ribs, and again they are also 11 pairs. They are also 11 pairs between 12 ribs that we have, and the abdominal muscles. We have the abdominal muscles, which basically push the diaphragm upwards. So now what will happen is that this volume is going to reduce further, which means that now let's say the internal intercostal muscles are going to reduce the rib cage more inward. They will push it more inwards, and the abdominal muscles will push the diaphragm upwards. This is the normal position. This is the normal relaxed position. However, during forced respiration, this is going to happen. Okay, so now this is the new position, which is being assisted by the internal intercostal muscles, which are being present between the rib cages and the abdominal muscles. So they are going to decrease it further, and the volume decreases further. So here the volume decreases further, and hence obviously the pressure will increase, and hence air is forced out into the atmosphere, and this is called forceful expiration. Okay, now just a quick look into what is basically the rate of breathing. In adults, the rate of breathing is 5 seconds, which means that in 1 minute we approximately breathe 12 times. Okay, we approximately breathe 12 times, which is 12 cycles per minute. This is normal breathing rate. When we are into heavy exercise or running or doing some heavy activity, this will increase, obviously, because the oxygen requirement increases. When we are at rest, when we are lying down, then this will decrease. Okay, so in younger children this rate is higher. This 12 cycles per minute, this rate is higher because it depends upon their metabolism. So the breathing rate basically depends upon the metabolism. Okay. Okay, so we are going to talk about the volume of air that is normally taken in, and what is the capacity, plus the forceful inspiration as well. Okay, so pulmonary air volume or lung capacities. This is basically the capacity of the lung and the pulmonary air volume during pulmonary respiration. So we know in human beings it is pulmonary respiration. So what is basically the capacity? Okay, so now the first term that we come across is the tidal volume. The abbreviated form of this will be TV. So the normal volume of air which is actually inhaled or exhaled during normal inspiration or expiration, and we also call this as in a position which is basically in a resting position. Now resting position doesn't mean that we are lying down or we are sleeping. Resting position means in which we are not actually involved in any heavy physical exercise, not running, walking, or even doing any kind of sports. Okay, so that is called the resting position, wherein our body's energy requirement is not that much, at least for external activities. So during this the tidal volume, the normal volume of air inhaled or exhaled during normal inspiration or expiration is just 500 milliliters. Okay, that is called the tidal volume, or a half a liter. Okay, we can say this is half a liter. So this is called the tidal volume. So out of this 500 milliliter, now when we inhale in, it's not that the entire 500 milliliter is going into the alveoli or the lungs. Some amount of air will always be there in the bronchial intercom. See, we have studied that this is basically the trachea, which divides into two bronchi and then it further branches out. So obviously, see, it's like a pipeline, right? In a pipeline, not all the water actually goes into our homes. Some of the water stays in the pipe itself. The more is the network, the more is the water that stays into the pipe. So air is also a fluid. When it is flowing through the primary bronchus or secondary bronchus or maybe tertiary bronchus, some amount of air stays in here. the rest of it goes into the alveoli. So it's not that the entire amount of 500 milliliters which we are inhaling is able to reach the alveoli. Okay, so out of the 500 milliliter, some portion reaches the alveoli while some remains in the bronchial intercom. So some of it remains in the bronchial intercom, and the primary, secondary and tertiary, whatever they are, till the alveolar duct. So this, it stays till the alveolar duct. So alveolar volume is basically 500 milliliters. We can say that this is the alveolar volume, out of which 350 milliliters reaches up to alveoli and 150 milliliters remains in the tract. So 350 milliliters which reaches the alveoli and 150 milliliters remains in the tract. So 150 milliliters, we can say that this is not being used in the inspiration volume. Okay, so 150 remains in the bronchial tracts of primary bronchus, secondary bronchus and tertiary bronchus. So this air volume which is not being used is known as dead space volume, and this stays where? Obviously in the bronchial tract. So we call it as anatomical dead space, because this is due to the anatomy. Okay, as I said, when in a building water is getting supplied, it is getting supplied through the pipes. The more number of pipes we have, the branching and the secondary branching and the tertiary branching, the more will be the water which will accumulate in these pipes, obviously. So more will be the wastage of water. So due to the anatomical space that we have of this entire network of branching and rebranching of bronchus, so that is called the anatomical dead space. This is known as the anatomical dead space, and the volume of air that accumulates here is known as anatomical dead space volume. Okay, so 350 milliliter reaches the alveoli and 150 remains in the tract. Okay, so 150 milliliter is not available for gaseous exchange. This 150 milliliter is not available for gaseous exchange, and hence it is also known as physiological dead space. This is also known as physiological dead space. This includes the anatomical dead space plus the non-functional alveoli. So this will include the anatomical dead space plus there are some alveoli which are non-functional. Okay, now we'll see anatomical dead space is just about the bronchus, primary, secondary and tertiary, but physiological dead space includes the anatomical dead space plus there are some alveoli which are not functional. So the air reaches there, but the air doesn't participate in the exchange of gases. Okay, so the air, the oxygen from that air will not come into our blood. Okay, so physiological dead space, this includes the anatomical dead space plus the non-functional alveoli through which the gaseous exchange doesn't take place. So from here, in spite of the air reaching the alveoli, the gaseous exchange will not take place. These are some non-functional alveoli. So what do we mean by inspiratory reserve volume? That is known as the IRV. So IRV basically, see, normal inspiration, as we saw, we are taking in approximately this is 500 milliliter of air, that is called the tidal volume. We have just studied here 500 milliliter of air, that is 0.5 liters of air. Now if we happen to stop this and try to inhale more, so there are some yogic asanas, okay, in which you the more of inspiration happens. Okay, if we try to inhale more, this is known as forceful inspiration, and some volume is reserved. See, it's like a balloon. Okay, the balloon will have a capacity to hold in air inside it, and there is a stretchable limit to which the balloon can accommodate more of air. After that it will explode. Okay, so between what the balloon actually has and what it is forced to has, there is a certain volume. So when we push in air into a balloon, it expands and expands to its anatomy. After that, what will happen is it will expand more, but this expansion will be adjusting that extra amount of air. So inspiratory reserve volume, if we stop and try to inhale more, which is basically forceful inspiration, some volume is reserved when we forcefully take in air. We are taking in air forcefully. So the volume of air which can be taken in our inhaled after normal inspiration is approximately 2000 to 3000 milliliters, that is 2 liters to 3 liters. This is the volume of air that we can take in after our tidal volume of 500 milliliters. So the lungs have the capacity to adjust more of this volume of air. Okay, so inspiratory capacity, what does it actually mean? The complete inhaled air. Now this will obviously include the volume of air that is coming in during tidal volume, that is normal respiration, no physical activity, nothing. So this is the tidal volume, which is approximately 0.5 liters or 500 milliliter, and the inspiratory reserve volume, which is the capacity, full capacity of the lungs, that's approximately 2000 to 3000 milliliter, depending upon the structure of the lungs, depending upon the height, body and shape of the person. Okay, so that is approximately 2 liters to 3 liters. So if we add both of these, the 500 plus, so this will be the inspiratory reserved volume. So 2000 plus 500 tidal volume, that is 2500, 3000 the upper limit plus 500, so this has 3500 milliliters. So 2.5 liters to 3.5 liters is actually the inspiratory capacity. That's including the normal tidal volume plus the extra amount of air which can be forcefully adjusted within our lungs. Okay. Okay, so in the previous slides we have discussed about the inspiration volumes. So what are the maximum volumes that are applicable during the process of inspiration? Now we'll talk about expiration. Okay, so expiratory reserve volume. What do we mean by reserve in the first case? Reserve means after we have utilized whatever is supposed to be used, after that whatever is left, that is called the surplus or the reserve value. Now in this case, after normal exhalation, so we know that during inspiration we are taking in approximately 500 milliliter of air, out of which certain portion goes into the alveoli for exchange, that is approximately 350 milliliter, and 150 milliliter stays in the bronchial intercom. Okay, so now when we inhale 500 milliliter of air during normal inspiration, which is basically the tidal volume, it's but obvious that we will exhale that much amount of air, so that will be normal exhalation. So after normal exhalation, which means throwing out 500 milliliter of air, the volume of air which is exhaled more, after normal expiration. So this is under forceful expiration. If we are doing forceful expiration, how much is the volume of air that will throw out after normal expiration? Normal expiration, we don't require the involvement of any external muscles. In forceful expiration, as we have seen, we will require the involvement of intercostal muscles, which is between the rib cages, and the abdominal muscles, which is between the diaphragm and the abdominal part. So during that, the amount of air that can be thrown out during forceful respiration is approximately from 1000 to 1500 milliliters. So if we take an average, it approximately is 1100 milliliters or 1.1 liters. Okay, so this all depends upon the lung size and all. Now we will come to something called as vital capacity, the maximum forceful expiration after normal expiration. So let's look at it. In normal breathing, we will throw out the tidal volume which we have taken, that is approximately what, 500 milliliter, and the forceful inspiration, the inspiration reserve volume. So inspiration reserve volume, so it means the tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume, and we have seen that the lung capacity to adjust more of air after normal inspiration is anywhere between 2000 to 3000 milliliter. In the previous slide we have just seen that. Okay, so this is the tidal volume, which is normal inspiration volume, and this is the IRV, which is basically the inspiration reserve volume. It means that the lungs, after receiving 500 milliliter through normal inspiration, can also receive an addition of 2000 to 3000 milliliters. So in this case we have the tidal volume, in this case we have the, so if we are taking in more of air, so that air could be anywhere in between 2000 to 3000, that's the capacity of the lungs to adjust. And the expiratory reserve volume, we have just learned the amount of air that we will forcefully, that we can forcefully expire is 1100 milliliters. So this is the vital capacity. If we add all these three, 500 here, let's say between 2000 to 3000 here and 1100 here, we will get approximately 3500 to 4500 milliliters, that is 3.5 to 4.5 liters. That is the vital capacity of the air that we can exhale out. Maximum forceful expiration after normal expiration. So normal breathing, the tidal volume is 500 milliliter plus forceful inspiration plus inspiration reserved volume. This is basically the inspiration reserved volume. So anything which we take in as air has to be released out. So this will be released out plus the expiratory reserved volume. If we add all of these three, we will get the vital capacity of the lungs, and that's approximately 3.5 to 4.5 liters. Okay, so this would be the volume of air forcefully exhaled after forcefully inhalation. Now there is something called as residual volume. This is basically remaining after forceful expiration. So after forceful expiration, whatever volume remains is known as the residual volume. So volume of air that remains in the lungs after forceful expiration is 1500 milliliters, and that's called the residual volume. This is called the residual volume. Okay, after forceful expiration, even after forceful expiration, the volume of air that remains in the lungs is 1500 milliliters, approximately 1.5 liters. So lungs are never empty. There is a constant amount of air that always will remain inside it. Now what is called functional residual volume? We have seen that there is a residual volume which remains in the lungs, that's to a tune of 1500 milliliters, and we have also seen that there is an expiration reserve volume. Okay, so the expiratory reserve volume is approximately what, 1100 milliliters. So this is called the functional residual volume, which means that this will take part in all the functions. Okay, so this will be the reserve volume is how much, 1500 milliliters, and the expiration reserve volume is 1100. So that piles up to approximately 2600 milliliters. So these were certain volumes with regards to expiration. In the previous slide we dealt with certain volumes with regards to inspiration. Okay.